Okay, here we go. So we're going to be talking about publications and photography. And the reason why I'm starting out with publications, the word publication, is we're going to start our multiple page document for um, our final project, which will be our magazine project. So you're going to be featured on the cover. So that's going to be milestone 1. I did have a few other milestones in there that I did not remove. There's one that I'm going to put in as an optional if you'd like to do it on your own time with a video tutorial to go with it. And that's the beverage company. You get to put your face like as a logo on any beverage you like. But I removed that just in because the amount of time that we've only got till week 12. So I took out that one. And so we're down to, I just wanted to make sure that this was manageable, especially also because we're not in person in class where I could come around and see how everyone's doing so that I could give some one-on-one help, and we don't really have that option here. So we're going to be talking about print layout design as well as other purposes of photography and working with photographers. All right, so let's talk about publications and photography. All right. So I just happened to, actually, when I went through school for graphic design and advertising, we also had 3 years of photography courses in each one of those years. And I'm also married to a professional photographer. So I've been on a lot of photo shoots, and I just want to go over the importance of when you're working with a photographer and your milestones, why I'm asking you to shoot your own photos for the purpose of the assignment. And that's because it comes down to art direction. There are specific needs for each project. And so if you have the opportunity to shoot new photography for a specific project, then you should at all times do that if it's within your budget. So there's publications use a whole bunch of different kinds of professional photographers. So you can hire photographers on staff. So my husband works for the Waterloo Region Record. He's a staff photographer. So he's hired as a full-time staff. You can hire freelancers. So when I was doing Grand Magazine, we hired photographers, freelance photographers in the area. And we also had a fashion freelance photographer from Hamilton who would come up and shoot for us as well. You can use an agency so maybe it's an ad agency and they have their own team of staffers, or a photography agency. You don't see many of those around much anymore, but we do see a lot of freelancers now. You can purchase stock photography. So there's iStock and a whole bunch of other sources where you can buy stock photography. You don't have to purchase necessarily. There's always those ones like pexels.com where you can get copyright free photography. And then of course you have using existing photography that you already own that's already in your archives. So when you're working with hospice this semester, what you'll want to ask for right at the very beginning is what archive sources do they have for you to use in order to create. You're going to be creating a video. So do they have video? Do they have photos that you can use? And they will all have to be pre-approved by hospice, right, for you to share. So make sure you get started on that in your teams and asking for photography. All right. So there are also lots of different kinds of photography. So we have portrait photography, and portraits, right? So we get a whole bunch of different kinds of portrait photography, right? So it could be the guy or gal who goes into a school to do all the pictures of all the kids for their class photos, right? There could be business photography business portraits for LinkedIn or for their board of directors, those kinds of portrait photography. And then there's family portrait photography. We have photojournalism. That's my husband. So he works for a newspaper and he gathers photos to help tell stories. And sometimes his photos are standalone and they tell the story. We have fashion photography, which we had our own fashion photographer for Grand Magazine. She was a freelancer. She was a model turned photographer, which was really cool. So she really knew the business inside and out. Sports photography, still life photography. So think about science journals, editorial photography, lots of let's not forget about book covers and photography to narrate and visually display content. Architectural photography, yep, drones taking pictures of cities and locations. And then we have wedding photography, which is really, wedding photography can be a lucrative business. It's a busy business, or it can be. And can you think of any other photography that I've missed here? Is there anything else that comes to mind?
Pet photography.
Yes, awesome, good for you. Yes, and it's growing as well. Pet photography. Is there anything else you can think of?
Nature photography.
Yes, and we would put nature photography as well into still life, but not necessarily, right? So you have National Geographic who have nature photographers. So yes, that's a great one as well.
For social media?
Yes, there are people who do specific, well, see, any one of these could be part of social media, but when you're thinking of your event, think about the social media platforms you're going to be using, and you're going to need that photography in order to visually showcase your event, right? So you can use archive images to promote the event. Then you have on-site in real time photography for your social media platform. So that's excellent as well. We have aerial photography. Yes, people who go up into planes to take pictures specifically of particular areas, especially for real estate companies. I knew a guy here in Guelph who had his own hangar with 2 planes, and he would go up and scout for land where he could acquisition and build on. So there's probably more that we haven't covered. There's aqua photography. Yep, underwater photography. So there's all sorts of different types of photographers. And when you take a look at each one, it's hard to be all of these included. So just taking a picture, just knowing how to use your camera, first of all, is one thing. But knowing the subject matter and knowing that industry to better understand it and how to shoot for it, and the trends and the market who are going to be looking at this. That's why we break these down into different categories, because you really have to know more about that industry in order to really have a focus on that. Like sports photography, being able to shoot speed, right? You really have to know the settings on your camera, versus still life photography, no speed. So still life is still life, right? So those are the kinds of things you have to know. Working with children and animals. And then wedding photography, you can't reshoot, right? It's happening and that's it. So you've got to get the photos at that time. So there's a lot more pressure in some of these industries as well. All right. So loads of different kinds of photography. In photojournalism, you have to know how to do more than that. So my husband has gone to Bosnia to shoot war-torn cities and avoid stepping on bombs, right? Undetonated bombs. He's gone to the Vancouver Olympics and he shot that, and he was there for a month shooting that. And then he does portraits, and you kind of have to know a little bit of everything when you're in photojournalism. All right. So, and he hates shooting weddings. I always end up shooting the weddings. He does not like shooting weddings at all. All right. So when you're working with a photographer, have you had a creative brief. You have been exposed to what a creative brief is, yes? In the past. So we do the same thing when we're working with a photographer. So can you